On the 23rd of June 2016, the United Kingdom will settle the question that has long been debated in British politics. Should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union or leave the European Union? This video will attempt to tell you everything you need to know about the 2016 EU referendum in less than 5 minutes. Are you ready?
Like a challenge. Begin.
What is a referendum? A referendum is a general vote by the public to decide on an answer to an important political question. In this case, the relationship between Britain and the EU. What is the European Union? The European Union, or commonly abbreviated to the letters EU, is a group of 28 European powers whose governments work together. Each power has to pay money to be a member. The EU then uses this money to change the way people live and do business in Europe. The European Union aims to help Europeans to live in safety and make laws that protect the rights of those living in the member countries. Why is a referendum being held? The UK voted to stay in Europe after a referendum in 1975. Moving forward 40 years, and the situation of the EU has changed dramatically. Many more countries have joined, and people think that the EU does too much. Mainly, if it tries to create one rule for everyone in Europe, then every power must obey it, even if they dislike it. Who will be able to vote? British, Irish and Commonwealth citizens over the age of 18 who are residents in the UK, along with UK nationals living abroad who have been on the electoral register in the past 15 years, are able to vote. The House of Lords and Commonwealth citizens in Gibraltar will also be eligible, unlike in a general election. But citizens from EU countries, apart from Ireland, Malta and Cyprus, will be unable to vote. What is Brexit? Brexit is the commonly used abbreviation for British exit from the European Union. Would Britain be better out of the European Union?
The unelected and unaccountable EU Commission imposes an undemocratic set of rules on disparate peoples, which don't work for them and does so in a costly and inefficient way.
Around about 6.7 billion a year that we end up paying in. However, leaving the EU would bring that money back to the UK that we don't have to pay out, and we can invest that in other things like the NHS and the other services that we have in the UK, and even invest it directly back into the economy.
Really, I just think Mrs Murphy runs the whole of the states don't really have a fair say in what's going on in the whole of the European community.
Britain inside the EU means a loss of national sovereignty. EU laws override our British legal system. We would do much better when not constrained by rules made specifically for the benefit of others. It is time to regain control from an undemocratic Brussels. For me, a vote to stay is not a vote for the status quo. It would be a vote for Merkel, Juncker, Tusk, and every other overpaid Eurocrat to drag us down with their sinking ship. Britain did fine outside the EU. There is no reason it couldn't do fine again, especially when not constrained by rules made specifically for the benefit of others.
Or would Britain be better staying in the European Union?
Our relationship with our trading partners will be ruined. We are the United States' link to the EU. We are surely going to break many ties with needed businesses and trades if we leave, meaning that we'll have less trade networks available. The hassle with making free trade agreements is not worth it.
I don't trust the current government to replace the environmental and civil liberties laws we will lose if we leave the EU.
In the interests of morality, it makes sense to help the citizens of countries such as those in Eastern Europe who aren't so lucky to have been born into such an economically developed, well-off country like Britain. We have the infrastructure and the economy to be able to take on many more European migrants than we already have, and there's no morally valid reason for sticking our fingers up at them and cutting ourselves off. The EU is indissociable from its founding values, European unity in the aftermath of centuries of war. The EU is a symbol of what our predecessors fought for. The vote to leave would thus symbolise an estrangement with what can in fact be considered fundamentally human values. We fight for a free NHS, yet we are prepared to abandon its political cousin. The e-HIC is available to all EU residents and guarantees the holder access to local health services. In the event of Brexit, applicability of the e-HIC would be subject to negotiations, limiting local healthcare access for all UK travellers.
Would the UK be the first power to leave the EU? Yes, the UK would. No nation state has ever left the EU before, but Greenland, one of Denmark's overseas territories, did after it held a referendum in 1982, voting 52 to 48% to leave the Union. What happens if voters back Brexit? If the British public decided to leave the EU, then David Cameron would trigger Article 50. This document formalises the British exit from the Union. The minimum period after a vote to leave would be 2 years. During this time, Britain would continue to abide by EU treaties and laws, but would not take part in any decision-making. When and how will the results be announced? The vote count will begin as soon as polls close at 10 p.m. on Thursday the 23rd of June at 382 local centres. The local results will be declared before being collated at 12 regional centres, which will also declare the totals for each side. A chief counting officer will then announce the overall result at Manchester Town Hall. Well, it looks like that's all we've got time for this instalment in the Debate Over the EU series. I will see you again after the referendum to have a talk about the results and how the decision will affect Britain as we know it.